What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of THPStrength. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about load management. We're going into every single little injury that you could have, whether it's shin splints or back pain or tendon pain, and how load management applies to each of those, because it's not just tendons. It also can be applied to the muscles, to the connective tissue, any real connective tissue, the bones, and it all comes back to these adaptation timelines and recovery timelines. But we'll get into that in a second. Before we do that, we want to give a quick shout out to our advertisers and sponsors. Firstly, we want to shout out Legion. If you guys are serious about your recovery, one of the only ways that you can improve it is by giving your body what it already needs. By taking fish oil, multivitamin, you are filling those holes in your nutrition so that your body can function more optimally and help itself recover better. Foam rolling, icing, contrast, all that other stuff pales in comparison to just making sure you're getting the right micronutrients in your diet to allow yourself to adapt optimally. Secondly, we want to give a shout out to Hawkins Dynamics. Those are the force plates that I use to get data on my RFD, peak forces, average forces. They have great leasing options. If you guys are interested in that, you can check out the link in the description, or you can go to their Instagram or their website and look at their leasing options if you're interested in getting force plates for testing and all those things that you might need it for. And lastly, we want to shout out ourselves. If you guys are interested in coaching and receiving coaching from myself and Isaiah and Hunter and Austin, make sure that you go to our website, THPStrength, and sign up for a consulting call, or you can sign up for training-only options where you miss out probably the most valuable part of the coaching, which is access to us, where we can individualize the coaching, make it specific to you, add in appropriate amounts of variation and adjust for injuries or changes in your scheduling, all that good stuff by signing up for the full service. All that said, we can get into it here. Firstly, I just want to say any updates as far as life. Isaiah, Hunter.
Want to take it away?
Take it away, Isaiah. Oh, you're totally muted. There's nothing. You just muted yourself. There's absolutely no sound.
Yourself, so
well
I'll
done.
go first.
Well done.
Update, my quad is at a 3 on a pistol squat. John cleared me to dunk tomorrow. Hype.
That's it.
Yeah.
Didn't
Short and
sleep
sweet,
last
love
night. Didn't sleep well last night.
Nope.
It's all right. He'll take a couple naps.
But it's okay. I'm here ready to go, baby.
Hunter, life updates.
I get to dunk today, and I can say that and actually believe I can dunk. Which is pretty cool. You can just be like,
I will
today's
dunk
a jump
today.
day, but now today's a dunk day.
Yeah, that'll be solid. Today is also a jump day for me, so I will be going over to the track after I walk my doggy. Also, my smoking hot girlfriend. If you've ever seen, what's the movie with the guy that plays Jackie Moon, Will Ferrell?
Oh,
About
basketball, semi-pro?
that's the Flint Tropics win the Mega Bowl. No, it's the other movie he's in where he's like a race
Corn
car
dogs,
driver.
Jackie. Corn dogs for everybody.
Corn dogs for all these people. No, what's the racing one that he's in where he's like, I just want to thank God for my smoking hot wife.
Oh,
Talladega Nights.
Yeah, that's what I was referencing. My smoking hot girlfriend is coming back today.
I was thinking about Jesus is baby Jesus.
Baby Jesus, 8 pound, 6 ounce. All right. Anyways,
Chip, I'm gonna come after you like a spider monkey.
I want to watch that.
If you guys haven't seen these movies, you need to watch them because they're hilarious, especially the basketball one. I love that one. What is it? Super.
Fun fact, Young Hollywood was the dunker. You know when they invented the alley-oop? Young Hollywood. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's why they call him Young Hollywood. That is so funny. That's so awesome. I wondered that. Wow. All right. Anyways, we'll get into it. I need to rewatch it with that lens. All right. So enough about the corn dogs.
I'm just gonna randomly do that after a dunk today. Just gonna turn to the camera and go,
corn dogs for all these people. I can't even get into this podcast. I'm laughing too hard. All right. So load management.
John had a good night last
off.
night, clearly.
I slept well. I am happy. So we're into the podcast here, which is load management, Isaiah's experiences, my experiences, Hunter's experiences. So Isaiah, we'll start with you. What is your experience with load management and applying it to your training and all those, everything?
Yeah. So load management is actually how I started working with John. As most of you guys know, I started working with him because of having really bad knee pain. And he took me through, I think I was one of his first like lab test tube
Lab rats.
creation thingies. Yeah.
You're my first lab rat,
Yeah. So
other than myself.
so he applied everything he learned about load management to me, and it worked extremely effectively. Got back to
What year was
dunking. 2018. It was
2017
March
or 18?
2018. It was right before dunk camp.
2018. So it's about 3 years
Yes.
ago.
Yeah, so it was I was in the load management program for about 3 months from March. Well, it was like 4 months from March to June. And yeah, I got back to being able to dunk with minimal knee pain. Since then, from my own stupidity, I've needed load management a few times. I'm currently on load management right now. And yeah, it works really effectively. As far as helping other athletes, I've also gotten pretty good at using it for other athletes. Namely, I had a personal lab rat by the name of Travis Reynolds. He came to me. Well, actually, I went to him because I saw he had knee pain, and I didn't want him to go through what I went through. So I offered to help him out. This was before THP. Also, this was like maybe 3-4 months before THP was a thing.
Was it that early on?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, that's right.
December.
You started with him like right before we joined forces. You were helping him. That was like your first project. I remember that. Because I remember putting his training or seeing his training on Team Builder all the time.
Yeah. So he had really bad knee pain, and I took him through a really similar load management cycle.
He lost a ton of weight too.
Yeah.
His progression was crazy. Sorry, I had to interrupt. It was
Load
think about
management.
that.
Yeah, it's insane. We should get him on a podcast, to be honest.
We definitely should.
Because he's honestly probably been the most, aside from like a couple other guys like Tom
Maybe
Barnes,
other than you.
and
Tom
he's
Barnes,
been,
yeah.
I don't think he missed a single workout like in a year and a half.
His
He started
compliance is
December.
crazy.
Because the thing I told him, I was like, I'm gonna help you out, because this is when I barely had any clients, and I wanted to like just help. I wanted to help Travis out, yeah. And I told him, I was like, look, I'll train you with one caveat. I don't know how to say that.
Caveat.
Whatever, yeah. I'm really bad at pronouncing words. I know them though.
Corn dogs.
Corn dogs for everybody. So what I told him was that I will train him. I will help you out with your knee pain, but you can't miss a single workout. If you do one thing that against what I say, like if you miss one workout, I'm done. Like I'm not going to train you. So yeah, I told him that, and he literally has not missed a single training session in a year and a half. And he has probably the craziest progress that we've had from someone on THP.
I mean, he was doing like, well, he couldn't even dunk, but when he could dunk, he was kind of, no offense, Travis, he was definitely too heavy to be a dunker. And he wasn't paying attention to his diet, wasn't training at all. He was doing another very prominent program and not seeing progress on it for his knee pain. And Isaiah was like, you know, like this, you're not making progress. We gotta change up what you're doing here. And he went from that to a year and a half later, probably losing like 25 pounds or something like that. I don't know how much weight it was, but it was a lot. And doing like a behind the back, between the legs, windmills off the backboard, like off the lob, off the dribble, 1 foot dunk.
Yeah.
1
and
foot
his weight room
windmill,
numbers are getting pretty.
Oh yeah.
decent.
Oh yeah.
He came from completely untrained. I remember because
he couldn't power clean the bar.
he was in a group chat with me and John, and I remember him sending like 95 pounds as his max for a power clean.
And it was terrible.
Yeah. And he just full cleaned, I believe, 225 catching in a deep squat. He deep squatted, I think right at 300 or 285, something like that.
Is that back squat or front squat?
Back squat. Front squat, I think, is like 245, 220. I think it's 245, 265 around there.
We literally made him a freak athlete when I think about it.
And he's gotten to the point where I feel like
I just hate his technique. That's why I'm like, no.
Yeah. But he's gotten to the point where he can he can probably turn into like a pretty good professional dunker, like competitive dunker.
Yeah, he's at that point now, I think.
So his journey again was knee pain. I took him through a progression. We took away jumping completely. We're gonna go into depth about a little more details about how the load management works, but progresses jumping up, progresses strength work up, and now he rarely ever has knee pain. I think he's experienced a couple bouts of it since then, but like we just back off the training a little bit, do like a mini load management for a week or two, and then that usually brings his pain back down. But yeah, that's my experience, and then countless other athletes on THP that we just through the coaching that we've helped. So yeah, super.
Biggest thing is compliance. Compliance is everything, and making sure you have the right diagnosis. Like misdiagnosis is probably the biggest issue. Like if you say you have a tendon problem and then you don't have a tendon problem and you have a meniscus or something like that, like that's where it can be problematic, or like then you kind of have to make some adjustments. But
I think we should cover that real quick. This load management applies to most tendons, right? And then so most tendons, and then we'll use it for like shin splints, and then like muscle.
It's like a modified load management for the other stuff though, because the timelines are different. And we'll cover that a little bit more. I want to go through Hunter and my experience before we really dive into like the heavy nitty gritty.
I'll write it in the note right here.
Yeah, write it in the note. All right, Hunter, what was your experience with load management? Had you ever done it prior to us, or your entire life you said prior to the podcast was load management? You were always
it's just been my entire life since 9th grade. I mean,
his life work is being injured.
High school football, tore my left meniscus, came back, and my dad was like, "Suck it up, you're doing 2 days." Like 4 days into 2 days, tore my right meniscus.
Thanks, Dad.
Next year, tore my right meniscus. Went to college, freshman year, hurt my back. Sophomore year, like wasn't allowed to practice without ankle braces because I'd sprain them so often. I had nerve damage in my right arm. My junior year of college, I tore my right meniscus and my left meniscus. I've had shoulder issues. I've had clavicular joint issues. So basically for the last, 12 years.
Oh, how's your pain on THP?
Oh, yeah. Then John fucked me.
No, that's not what I asked.
You fucked yourself.
You fucked yourself up. A, and B, when you did what I said, how's your pain level now?
I saw the meme where he was like, "Oh, I'll just load up the bar with a million pounds and jump with it."
Dude. Oh wait, it's a general easy day.
Yeah,
go to the gym and
do
1,000 bicep curls and put 250 pounds on the bar and jump with it.
So for real, yesterday I had an easy/off day, and let me tell you what I did. I got almost 9 hours of sleep, and I didn't do anything.
Oh my god!
Wow, you're probably gonna jump really high today.
Yeah, we'll see.
Oh,
that
those
means you're
I'm nice. Like, I don't even know what to do with this. Like, speaking of Will Ferrell, I don't know what to do with my hands.
I don't know what to do with my hands. Anyways, so that's your experience in the past. Now you've been on a load management progression, actually, and you're pretty much
that 4-3-4 squat progression? Was that load management? I'm sorry.
Well, that wasn't what you're supposed to do. But anyways, prior to you, when you actually do the program appropriately, and when I don't fuck up, it works. So Hunter is pretty much pain-free right now, I would say, right? You would agree with that? Are you
I got knock
yes or no?
Wood in my
knock on wood.
Just knock on everything in this house.
Yeah. But things are good right now. So it definitely does work. I myself have used it for the last, I'd say on and off for the last 2 years when I have flare-ups and things like that. It just depends on what I'm doing. I mean, adding plyo volume is always going to be throw a wrench in things and going to cause problems unless you really monitor what you're doing. And that took a lot of communication between Matt and I to kind of get it where it needed to be volume-wise and intensity-wise and load-wise. But I forget I'm like the forefather in dunking for load management. No one really had heard of it. And then I spoke about it at dunk camp and everyone's like, isometrics. And I'm like, that's not the point of what I just talked about for the last hour and a half. You just took one part of it.
I remember when I was at I can say this ATG dunk weekend. And I remember I did ISOs, and this was the weekend everybody had like messed up knees, which is why they got invited there. But I remember I went there and I started doing ISOs, and then everybody was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do that," and like everybody was doing ISOs, and I was like, "This is your first time doing it. Like, it's probably gonna make you sore." And like, They also probably don't know how to do it properly. Like everybody just grabbed their knee and started pushing out against their hands.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean,
Load management is not just isometrics.
It is not isometrics. Load management is not isometrics. Isometrics is something you can do to warm up your tendon and help with nociception or your perception of pain and help with a couple other things. But it is not a cure-all. I think people assume that is all we prescribe. They're like, isometrics, that's THP.
Yeah. It's because people look for that magical exercise. They want something. They want like one exercise to represent. Like,
yeah, it'll help. Like if you're going to add one thing to your training that's actually going to help your tendon, warming up with isometrics is probably the easiest, most effective thing that you can do to help your tendon pain, for sure. But if you jump a ton and you already have a ton of tendon pain, it's not going to work. Like it's just going to make it worse, probably. Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of people neglect is that it's load management. It's not just adding load. It's sometimes pulling away. And I gave the lecture, a bunch of dunkers started putting on their story. Isometrics went really crazy. And slowly over the last 2 years, I have changed my loading schemes a lot for a lot of people because I realized that my training was too hard for people and that they're soft. And I challenge, if you're listening to this and you're one of my athletes, and you, nice Hunter, if you're one of my athletes and you are on the 6 day a week loading where it's high-low and you do every session, comment below and let me know because I highly doubt after coaching Isaiah for the last 3 years and seeing his response and knowing myself and how I am and how difficult the training actually is, I highly doubt a lot of the people on the training actually do every single element of it. So if you do and you are on the training and you are on that setup, let me know in the comment section if you do every single session because
someone hit me up on Instagram DM and was like, dude, I feel you getting tired after John doesn't let you touch weights for a 2 hour fucking warm up. And I was like, yeah. You gotta actually do this though.
All I hear is, I'm not going to say it. I can't say it. Oh, dang.
Corn dogs, Jack.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like you gotta
not be soft.
You gotta not be soft. You gotta really dive in. And the thing is, like
sleep and eat well.
Load management is probably less volume. It's probably 40% less volume than the normal training loads that I would give people. So when people are like, "Can I hoop and do the hard program?" I'm like, "There's no way you're doing every part of this because you'd be training 3 or 4 hours a day and your knees would explode. Like, there's just no way you're doing it, or you're not doing it right." So when people say that, I'm always like really doubting it unless they're just built different. And that happens. Sometimes guys are built different. But that's my experience with it. Definitely works, super effective, and we will get into it. There's a note here you added when not to use load management, aka what injuries should not do THP on. I don't know what that means, Isaiah. Your grammar is really rough.
Yeah, so my grammar's rough when I type notes. But basically, I want to clarify what type of injuries people have and like should you not do online coaching for? Like when should you see like a healthcare professional instead of
disclaimer. I am not a doctor. I will say it again. I'm not a doctor. I am not giving you medical advice or telling you what to do. Go see your doctor, okay?
Do not go to your doctor and be like, I know that you told me I have a torn ACL, MCL, and meniscus in my right knee, but John Evans on this one podcast told me that if I did X, Y, and Z, it would cure itself.
Yeah, no, I want to be clear. I am going to tell you my experiences, what the evidence says, what my friends who are PTs and MDs and DOs, and what the evidence and contraindications and things like that indicate. That said, this is not me giving you medical advice. But if you listen to Ebony Rio, Joe Cook, Craig Purdom, you can pretty quickly tell if something is a tendon by loading it quickly and seeing if there's more pain if you load it quickly versus slowly. So if it's a patella, for example, jumping will hurt the most. Slow squats will hurt less. Fast or it's a continuum. So the most painful thing would be the fastest, highest loaded activity. Tendons respond to load in terms of your pain is directly correlated with the load you put on the tendon. If you put more load on the tendon, you're going to have more pain. So if you load it fast and you load it with more weight or force, you're going to have more pain. So more force and faster force means more pain in the tendon if you have a tendinopathy. Typically, you'll feel it right on the site of the junction of the bone and the tendon. So if it's your patella, it'll be right under your patella tendon. I say patella just to shorthand it. But if it's the patella tendon, it'll be the junction, usually if you're a high jumper, on the medial side, so the inside of your kneecap, on the very bottom, where the junction of the bone and the tendon is. If you're a 2-foot jumper and you have really large tibial tuberosities, and that's the bone coming out of the tibia, the kind of bump, the jumper's bump, or whatever you call it, Isaiah.
The Osgood bump.
The Oscar Slaughter's bump, which is another thing. I don't think Oscar Slaughter's is like a valid. I think it is the bone growing into the tendon and that junction getting flared up, and it's really just tendinopathy, and it's ongoing because of development.
Yeah.
But Oscar Slaughter's, I don't think, is like a valid. Like, it doesn't tell you what the problem is. And if you go to the site, the only thing that's there is the bone and your tendon and the junction. And when people point to the bone, like, it hurts right here, I'm like, yeah, well, that's basically tendinopathy. It's the tendon bony junction, and you're feeling tendinopathy at there.
That's actually what I had. I had Osgood Slaughters growing up. I think it started at 14. And then I kept jumping every day, and it just never went away even after I stopped growing. So it was, and then we just treated it like tendinopathy, and it went away. Also, we've had a lot of people with Osgood Slaughters, and
won't go into details, but we see it.
Yeah, and we treat it.
Claim.
Yeah, and we just treat it like tendinopathy, and it works really well. I've found for people with Osgood Slaughters, isometrics are really, really, really effective.
Yeah, it changes. It depends on the joint angle too. If you have a more open knee joint angle, that's going to be less provocative than going deeper, because I believe that the tendon experiences compression when you go into that deep knee flexion. So the bone is really pushing into the tendon, being pressed into the tendon, which causes a lot of pain.
Yeah. So I believe there's 4 different ways that can irritate the tendon, or there's like four ways.
Well, I guess I didn't even say really how you tell. I mean, really how you tell is, do you have pain on the tendon when you load it fast? If you have pain on the tendon site when you load it fast, if you can point to the tendon, you feel the tendon, any tendon, it could be the Achilles, it could be the quad tendon, it could be the patella, it could be the bicep tendon, tricep tendon.
Lateralis on the greater trochanter.
Lateralis on the greater trochanter. If you load it fast and it responds with pain, then you know that, and you circle, if you were to circle the area and you're like, yeah, that's right where the tendon is, it's probably tendinopathy. People are always like, oh, it's bursitis or it's this other stuff. And I'm like, well, you're doing something that involves super elastic activities where the tendon's acting like a spring over and over and over and over and over again. It's highly likely that where you circled, there's a tendon, because I know basic anatomy, and you're using that muscle and bone a lot, or that muscle and tendon a lot. It's probably tendinopathy. And then you give them essentially a load management progression, and then it gets better. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense to me. But to answer your question, Isaiah, what was it again? The 4 or what?
There's like ways that that the tendon can experience like pain, like things that induce it.
Like things you shouldn't do?
No. It's like load, compression.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, I kind of summed it up earlier, but
speed.
Yeah, that was from the old lecture. I've kind of parsed it down now. What Isaiah is referring to is in my load management lecture, I say there's like 3 things. It's like the speed that you load the tendon, the magnitude of that load, and the range of motion that you load that tendon through are essentially how you could quantify the load on the tendon. So if you're running into a jump with a weight vest on, that's going to be probably the most provocative thing that you could do for your tendon. Or if it's your Achilles and you're doing depth jumps with a weight vest on and you have really short ground contact times, that's going to be one of the most provocative. Or you drop from a higher height, maybe you don't even need
or a sissy squat depth jump with a weight vest.
Sissy squat depth jump with a weight vest, that's going to be really bad. Yeah, landing in a lot of flexion at the knee or the Achilles, or at the ankle, knee or the ankle, is going to load the tendon more, because you experience compression, which is the bone pushing into the tendon, which there's good evidence on increases the loading on the tendon, and that's going to make it more provocative. In the hamstring tendon is a great example. If you go into a deep squat and the bone is pushing into the tendon at the ischial tuberosity, which is like the bump that you sit on, or if you're sitting in hard chairs all the time or whatever else, you're adding compressive loads to that tendon. And if you don't account for that, it is going to cause problems. And that's why the range of motion is also really important, because it not only is because of the moment, the changes in leverage and the fact that you're at more of a mechanical disadvantage when you're in a deeper position, but it's also the addition of compression as you move into deeper positions at the hip or the knee or the ankle. Usually it causes more issues because, again, the bone is pushing in actively to the tendon. So those are the 3 ways that I kind of quantify the intensity of an activity, and being able to use those three variables, you can pretty clearly write out a continuum of intensities, if you know what you're doing, to be able to progress people back. And doing this cyclically, this is just kind of summing up what load management is, doing it cyclically in such a way that you don't see massive spikes in pain, or when you do, you know how to respond, is how you get people to slowly drip feed back to their full intensity and full effort levels. That's kind of the summing it up. You would agree with that, Isaiah?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess we can
how to quantify. I mean, this is kind of related to it. I didn't really talk about this, but I do want to cover this. When you're talking about how to quantify load, it's important to understand how tendons function. And like I said, this does apply to other things, but load management initially, I would even say pain threshold training applies more to the other types of tissue in the body, like the bone and some of the cartilages. But the tendons specifically function like springs. And the stiffer the spring, the harder it is to load it. So if you have a very stiff Achilles or a very stiff patella, you're going to need more force to get it to function like a spring and a force amplifier. The analogy that I have here is that springs can act like stiff force transducers, like pulling a rock with a steel pole, or they can act like a force amplifier, which is like loading a slingshot. Meaning if you're doing a standing jump, for example, you might not actually see the tendon lengthen and shorten and store and release energy because it's too slow. You might just see it function like a steel bar, whereas in the lever system, it's just a really stiff lever that's functioning to move your body through a range of motion fast, but it's not actually amplifying the force that you're seeing in that movement. Versus a running jump, you might see the tendon function like a slingshot, where it's actually adding load and vaulting you into space or into over the bar or whatever else, or sprinting, the Achilles functioning like a force amplifier. That's why you see, like, if you've ever worked with elite sprinters, this is a good analogy or a good example. Illustration is the word I'm looking for. If you've ever worked with elite sprinters with crazy stiff Achilles, they absolutely suck at standing vertical jump. They are so bad at it. They cannot do it. They suck at med ball throws. They suck at anything that requires, I mean, some of the football guys did better, but the majority of the time, they're just not good at things that they don't have enough load on their tendon to take advantage of. Meaning, when they upright sprint, they're seeing huge forces super quickly through their Achilles. But when they're doing like a standing vertical jump, they don't have enough energy to get the tendon to stretch and function like a force amplifier. It just functions as a stiff force transducer. So it's totally muscular. And some of these football guys will basically override that by just being so insanely powerful that either their muscles are strong enough to actually tug on the tendon anyways, even if they don't have enough load on the down phase or whatever else, or they function like a force transducer and their RFD in the muscle is so high that they jump crazy high or sprint crazy fast in those starting movements, which is why you want to address the entire force velocity curve so that you address every single degree per second joint velocity. When you're starting, you start at 0 degrees. When you start sprinting, it's going to progress. You don't just go from 0 to 180. It's not instantaneous. There's a curve that you move along and you move across. And that's why I always say you want to surf the force velocity curve, because you start at 0 and at some point you're going to be at 1. At some point you're going to be at 2. At some point you're going to be at 3 degrees per second. And you accelerate across that change in velocity. And that all said, the tendon is a spring. It can function like a force transducer, which is just a connector that lets you move one thing to another like a steel bar, or it can function like a slingshot where it's actually going to amplify force and get you to move farther or faster. And load management is taking advantage of that basic principle or understanding of the tendon. Isaiah, you would agree with that?
Yeah. So back to what I had asked.
Stephen Celia says, back to me.
So what injuries should you go see a professional for instead of doing the program?
Okay.
Like online coaching for it.
I mean, basically anything that's not a tendon, I would recommend you get a diagnostic for. If you have a herniated disc, like tendons are difficult because they're only going to hurt when you're trying to do some crazy explosive activity. And across a continuum where activities of daily living or sedentary lifestyle is the beginning of that progression, and at the end of the progression is max effort single leg jumping, across that continuum, you're moving across tendon load. In the middle might be jogging. and towards the farther end of the spectrum might be running faster, and towards the other end of the spectrum might be cutting and changing direction, and towards the far end of the spectrum or continuum is max effort single leg jumping. So if it's a tendon, odds are like walking upstairs and stuff like that, even if you have a little bit of pain, it's like, yeah, I can still do it. It's not a big deal. And like, it goes up and down. It just hurts when I play. And people are like, well, what are you going to do? Go see the doctor? You know what the doctor is going to say? Stop playing. Like, they don't, you know what I mean? They're not, or they're going to say, oh, let's give you an injection or let's give you a surgery or something. But like, if you're feeling pain walking upstairs, a little bit of pain, they're not going to be like, let's have surgery. They're not going to do that. That's just like ridiculous. And if you have like a meniscus or something, or an ACL or a PCL or LCL or MCL or these ligaments, odds are like you need to go see a doctor for that, because they're they're pretty avascular. I'm assuming they can probably adapt as well. I mean, they definitely do adapt as well, but that's not something that you can just do PT to get through. That's something that like you need to actually go speak to someone to have a diagnostic done, and you probably need surgery. I don't know if there are many interventions where you can not have a surgery and it'll, for an ACL or PCL or LC or MCL. I don't know. Do you guys know anything about that?
I don't know. I do know.
I'm sure if it's a partial, like it would probably have some capacity to heal itself. Like the meniscus,
I have
the
a
superficial
personal
portion of the meniscus can.
So I have a personal anecdote as far as it being like a partial. So I'm pretty sure I partially tore my meniscus 3 years ago. I was doing a dunk show.
That one's undisputed. The superficial portion can repair on that.
Yeah, so
but it definitely can heal.
I was doing a dunk show and I did a 180 between the legs off a handoff, and on that dunk, my landing's always the same. I should probably try to fix this, but I always land on my right leg every single time, just because like I'm falling away and then my left leg's up, and I always land on my right leg. During that dunk show, I landed like stiff-legged onto the ground, no like bend in my knee basically, and like I'm pretty sure I messed up my meniscus. It was like pretty excruciating pain for a couple of days, and then at the time I didn't have health insurance, so
I've been there.
Yeah.
We've been there. We have been so poor. You guys, we should
Pro
talk
dunker
about
money, baby.
I didn't even have pro dunker money, bro. I had student loan money. Like I was just going broke, more broke and more broke.
Yeah. So I didn't see a doctor for it, and I just rested. I took time off, and it got better slowly. And then through the years, it's come back. And it's like I remember when I first started sprinting, because sprinting, like obviously you have to be stiff at the knee and at the Achilles. You gotta be hard at the knee.
At the knee, you have a lot of joint stiffness.
Yeah, but like that straight-legged contact, it really flared up. I remember we took some time off from sprinting and focused on like slow strength and things like that, because I also had regular knee pain. But it's gotten to the point where I like never have issues with it. Like the worst I'll feel it was if I go on a 14-hour flight and my knee is bent the entire time. Like when I first stand up, it feels weird, but other than that, it's been like super manageable. And I know there's guys that have gone through similar. Like
what's interesting is that the research indicates that early surgery for meniscus is a better outcome than like resistance training and training. I thought that was pretty interesting, because most times people are like, oh, surgery is the last option. But if you look at the outcomes and you look at some of the research, I don't have the research off the top of my head, but I could find it. If you you look at reviews where they're looking at all of the outcomes of meniscus rehab or surgery, actually indicates surgery is a better option. You have less pain in the long term versus not having surgery and doing a strength resistance training intervention. And I have a lateral meniscus tear and a medial meniscus tear. Both of mine almost never give me pain. I did them in undergrad deep squatting whenever I was being told like, oh, if you don't deep squat, you're not an athlete. And I was like, oh, I guess I got a deep squat.
Isn't it
trying to get into weightlifting?
Isn't it a thing?
It's twisting and flexion is where you're going to tear your meniscus. That's like,
yeah. Isn't it a thing that like most athletes, I don't remember where I heard this, but it's like most athletes have like a
herniated disc.
I've heard something similar to that, but with the meniscus.
Yeah, it's like if you were to do an MRI of everyone's meniscus that is an athlete or whatever else, you would or their discs or whatever else, you would likely observe some level of compression or herniation, or I forget what it is, where the disc gets smaller or whatever else. It's like before you herniate it, there's something else that happens. I can't remember off the top of my head. I had it when I was in 14 or 15, and then I did eventually herniate my discs because I wasn't doing THB at the time. I was doing whatever I wanted.
It might just be a
learning.
compressed disc. I don't know.
I can't remember what it is. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But yeah, the majority of the population, if you were to put them under a microscope, they have damage to that fibrocartilage. I mean, that's just pretty common. But it's like the tough part about it is that you have, what people don't understand is it's a continuum. You could have a little bit of damage and no pain, totally pain-free, and live a very active lifestyle doing full training or whatever else. Or you might have a really serious tear and then part of the meniscus is actually flipped over on itself and your knee buckles and locks because you can't bend it because there's literally a piece of fibrocartilage between the femur and the tibia, and you're screwed. And it's different for everyone, you know. Not every injury to the meniscus is created equally. They're all going to be different. That's like saying like, oh, I ripped this piece of paper in half, or I ripped this piece of paper. Like, to what extent? Did you rip it completely in half? Did you give it a little tear on one side? Like, is it crumpled up in a ball and flipped over on itself? Like, the body it's not this dichotomous thing where it's either this or it's this. You know, it's a continuum. There's a bunch of different things that could happen. Could have a piece of bone between your joint or whatever that's causing pain in the meniscus. It's really tough to just say it's either this or it's this, and this is the solution.
Yeah,
that's not the case. Like every meniscus injury is different.
There's also a lot of interesting research on just the psychological pain that might come from an injury that you never felt comfortable recovering from, where your brain is now hardwired to feel pain in an area when an actual physical abnormality no longer exists.
Yeah. That's like nociception in your brain. Your brain basically learns it. That's what isometrics do, actually. They decrease the pain sensation that you feel. You have a decreased sensitivity, basically, to the tendon. That's part of the reason why they work so well. And the tendon can still function super optimally and pain-free. It doesn't even matter. You actually have more good tendon than bad tendon when you have tendinopathy, because you've loaded it so many times to get tendinopathy that you cause the tendon to produce a bunch of collagen matrix and actually stiffen itself and become hypertrophy. But if you're feeling pain, your sensitivity, like Hunter said, is increased to a point that you feel more pain. And that's what one of the benefits of isometrics is. We went really in on a bunch of different stuff. But to answer Isaiah's question, if you have pain that is not a tendon in the knee, go see a doctor. If it's chondromalacia, if it's a meniscus, if it's an ACL, PCL, any of the ligaments in the knee, and you know it's not a tendon or a muscle, you should see a doctor. Because tendons and muscles, the intervention's pretty much a lot easier, unless you rupture it, in which case, obviously go see it. But a little bit of tendon pain, soreness or whatever else, you're not going to go see a doctor for delayed onset muscle soreness or a little bit of joint soreness or pain, a little bit of arthritis. It's probably not what you're going to do. But, if you're having pain in the center of your knee, go get a diagnosis. Go see a PT or whatever else.
I see so many people in our coaching, they treat us like we're doctors.
And we're go see your doctor.
Yeah, I go answer the questions every morning, and I'll open it, and some guy's like, hey, I sprained my ACL, and I think I tore this, and I feel it right in the middle of my knee. What should I do? I'm like, go see a doctor, bro.
Yeah, this is way out of there are levels to this shit.
Yeah. And we're not, and we're completely transparent with what we can or can't do. We're not,
dude, so many PTs are like, oh, you claim you could fix everything. I'm like, no, not at all. You don't, first off, you don't own pain. So shut up. Jill Cook, Ebony Rio told me that on a call once. She's like, PTs don't own pain. We did the research and shit like that. We did it for everyone. We didn't use it. So just PTs had access to it, to exercise. That's stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the other question we get is oh, you think you're not a doctor, you're not a PT, you didn't take apart an anatomy model and blah, blah. And you're like, you're right, I didn't. And when things are outside of my scope, I pass it off. You know what I mean? I deal with jumping athletes. I deal with common injuries that jumping athletes have that my S&C training can either mitigate, function as prehabilitation for, or just assist an athlete get pain-free. Because there's a lot of problems if you just walk into, if you're 90% back, but you're not 100% back, going to PT is there's like this weird in between, you know what I mean? That we kind of fill the void for, I feel like.
Yeah. Having said that, I feel like we should do a part 2 of this load management. I think in a part 2 we can cover, I'm reading right here, common mistakes, load management through in-season basketball,
Threshold,
backs,
pain threshold, bone loading. There's so many things.
yeah. So yeah, I guess we'll do a part 2. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, comment things that you want us to cover specifically about load management. I think that would be pretty cool to see. Answer you guys' questions.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, we'll close it out then. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Right,
also,
sweet.
We're officially on Apple Podcasts. I got an email saying that. So if you're on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star rating. Leave a good review.
What do you look up? Is it THPStrength? Is it THPStrength podcast? THP_strength?
You should be able to look up THPStrength, and that's
THPStrength. Also, shout out Matt, leaving a great review.
Matt McInnes Watson.
It. Yeah, left a fire review
Thanks,
for
Matt.
us.
Yeah, we'll close it out now. Thanks for listening, guys. As Isaiah said, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or you're listening on Spotify, make sure that you like, comment, leave a review. It helps the algorithm. It helps us grow and get this information out. We want to try to be the #1 fitness, health, training podcast in the country for S&C coaches, for athletes. It's totally free, and it takes you guys 30 seconds to do that. So make sure that you do that. If you're listening on YouTube, leave a comment, like, whatever else. Again, it helps us, even if it's just that, hey guys, I like this, or hey guys, I'm listening. Doesn't even have to be anything crazy. Definitely helps us for sure. And follow us on Instagram. Thanks for listening, guys, and we will catch you on tomorrow's episode. Peace out.
Peace.